Election stakeholders in Nigeria have tasked citizens and political leaders to shun acts capable of instigating violence in the upcoming off-cycle elections held in Bayelsa, or to be held in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states. This was as they met in Abuja to appraise events leading up to the polls, where they called on security agencies to guarantee the safety of voters before, during, and after the elections. Idan Joseph compiled this report.
Electoral violence and insecurity over the years have become the major elements that affect the integrity of Nigeria's electoral process, as it deprives citizens the ability to freely participate in the polls. In order to address the challenges of election violence and insecurity ahead of the upcoming Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi governorship elections, stakeholders have converged on the nation's capital to sensitize citizens and the electoral body on how to avert expected violence. They urge the Independent National Electoral Commission and security agencies to be wary of some of the threats witnessed in the 2023 general elections, some of which include voter oppression, voter intimidation, amongst others.
The risk of voter suppression and intimidation, that is one factor that is likely to generate violence, and it is one tactic that Nigerian politicians use quite often. The second one is the tendency to manipulate the security agencies to serve partisan interests. The third one is what I call logistics failure on the part of INEC. That could also be a precursor for violence.
While maintaining that utterances by political leaders could stir violence during the polls, they urged all stakeholders to shun acts that can instigate violence.
And one of the most immediate things that needs to be done is for these people in power, incumbent governors, to show sensitivity and responsibility to recognize that no life needs to be lost in a contest for political office.
So the governance at the state level to really moderate power and understand that they're holding power as stewards for the people. And it's really about the people, it's not about them. And if you really want to serve, you should be thinking of the people first and not be deploying all manner of violence against your citizens.
What we can all do is everybody to talk to his own family members in Kogi today, in Bayelsa today, and in Imo today. Let peace reign. That's the quickest we can all do. Let everybody appeal to his own family member. Everybody that causing crisis belongs to one family.
Though Nigeria's electoral body have assured that all arrangements have been put in place to ensure that the polls are free, fair, and credible, stakeholders are calling on citizens to play their part and avoid acts that can mar the elections.
Human rights defender and executive director of Development Dynamics, Jude Ohanele, joins me live to further discuss this. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, my brother.
Now let's talk about the issue currently on ground with previous cases of election violence in the country. How do you assess the current political climate in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states leading up to the elections?
Yeah, unfortunately, the tendencies towards violence being exhibited, most especially by state actors in our electoral process, it's most unfortunate. And you can see that those tendencies are still in the air. A lot of apprehension, a lot of people feeling that the government running the various states at the moment are intent on winning the election at all costs. And all of the actions and inaction pointing towards the exclusion of others and a push towards violence, which is quite condemnable. And I'm happy that the various stakeholders are asking them to be more civil in their operation and also asking the security agencies to do their job in a non-partisan manner, because they are paid every 30 days with public resources, not partisan resources. So I hope that all those stakeholders will realize what is needed and do their best to make these elections violence-free.
Now, what measures do you think can be taken to ensure the safety and security of voters, particularly during the elections in these states?
Yeah, the measures are clear. The president has to speak out and call out and let his people know that they don't need to grab it, snatch it, and run with it. You know, the president needs to make that very clearly, that this thing should be a civil engagement and pass it on to all the various arms of the security apparatus. And also rein in on the state governors and let them understand that all actors who act against the law will be held accountable. It's clearly an executive responsibility at the moment. And unfortunately, this responsibility has been carried out in breach in the past, especially during the general election. And I think the world is watching. And it's important for this government to come out clear that the security agencies in this country can no longer be used for the purposes of election rigging and violence during election. So now, the president has a huge responsibility here, and all the state governors in these three locations also have great responsibility.
Let's talk about the role of election observers and also major stakeholders during the process itself. How important or impactful is their role in this particular process?
Sure. The election observers have been critical in improving the electoral process in Nigeria. And I must give great kudos to Professor Tahiru Jega, the then INEC chairman, who was quite attentive to the recommendations and suggestions and comments from the election observers, because the observers are the ones that observe firsthand what happens in the field. And whatever report they send in is a clear indication of what has happened, not what was supposed to happen. And you know, in elections, the credibility of any election begins to improve when what happened becomes aligned with what should have happened. You know, so the work of the election observers has been very helpful in moving us to where we are. And of course, you know, the whole concept of bringing in the IREV was the push from those of us in civil society. Our organization, Development Dynamics, from 2011 championed the cause for results to be published polling unit by polling unit, which was now pushed to the level where it got to the IREF, because it is only the polling unit result that the voter is aware of. And when they are able to isolate their own polling unit result in the election tabulation, the result tabulation, it gives more credibility to the election. So the observers have been very useful, but unfortunately, the recent ruling of the Supreme Court pushed back on some of those gains we've made over the years.
Okay, would you like to be specific on some of the gains? Sorry, you said the recent rulings of the Supreme Court actually did push back on some of the gains achieved. Would you like to be specific on some of them?
Yeah, of course. The transmission of results real time and the use of the IREF, you know, the INEC result viewing portal, you know, was basically a technology brought in to make for real transmission of results before any attempt to manipulate the figures by the political actors. And that was to be a game changer in the 2023 election, which INEC botched. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court in their ruling seemed to have aligned with INEC, which is most unfortunate. And it's expected, it's very clear to every stakeholder that without the use of non-human elements, which include technology, people who have power, who have captured the states to an extent, will continue to manipulate election results. So it's very important for every stakeholder to realize that having real-time transmission of election results electronically from the polling unit and making that an issue that will be backed fully by law at all levels is very critical to improving the credibility of our elections in Nigeria.
All right, thank you so much for your time, Jude.
Thank you very much.